Calypso's flying arm, a PBY refitted for diving operations, nears Isla Isabella, 21 miles off the western coast of Mexico. Captain Cousteau plans a preliminary investigation of the island. He has long sought a single location where he might study a wide variety of seabirds interacting in a mixed community. Isla Isabella, a tiny rock on the seascape only 1.5 miles long, is said to be populated by enormous numbers of tropical seabirds of many different species. Such an island will provide Cousteau with an ideal opportunity to study how the birds manage to share the resources of these waters. Piloted by Philippe Cousteau, the PBY enters the domain of the seabirds of Isabella. A male frigate, his crimson pouch inflated in full courtship display. The frigates dominate the island, and over the water, these legendary buccaneers of the sky fly a relentless patrol. Although the frigates rule over Isabella, it is also home to many others. The blue-footed booby, soaring with its brightly colored webbed feet tucked against its body. The red-billed tropic bird, come to Isabella only to breed and soon to take wing again over thousands of ocean miles. The brown pelican, an endangered species in northern waters, yet still plentiful here. The feeding frenzy of the seabirds is punctuated by the spectacular fishing techniques of the brown boobies. They fly underwater to reach their prey. Out of the water, the booby's prize is lost to the pirate frigate bird. Now the seabirds of Isabella, and their competition for existence on land and in the sea. Having anchored the PBY, in a Zodiac, Captain Cousteau and Philippe approach the coastal cliffs of Isla Isabella. They are met by Heermann gulls nesting in the area. The birds combine with the rough surf to create an eventful welcome. The gulls sense a threat to their nesting sites and aggressively try to discourage the intruders. In the South Cove, the team comes ashore for a preliminary investigation of the island. On the beach, there are a few huts, seasonally used by mainland fishermen and their families.
Seabirds cover the island, but upon arrival, one is immediately struck by the dominance of the magnificent frigate birds. Over Isabella, the frigates reign supreme. Like a swirling black cloud, they hover above, ready to steal their share of every other bird's meal. Here, every available space seems claimed by colonies of different seabird species. Here there is no quiet, no idyllic peace. The island teems with life, with winged creatures come to Isabella to nest.
Sooty terns by the thousands migrate long distances over the sea and come to land only to breed. Just out of its shell, a newborn sooty tern. Most chicks of other species here eat only pre-digested food, but the baby tern can swallow whole fish. Returning from feeding in the open sea, a male blue-footed booby. Its blue-webbed feet serve as air brakes. They are also used in a display that signals it is courtship time. Cousteau and Philippe are in position now to observe the courtship rituals of the blue-footed boobies. Coming in, boobies glide to a stall, then flap for a soft vertical landing.
In Spanish, bobo means clown or dunce. Boobies are so named because they often nest in the open, which makes them vulnerable to intruders. Foolish clowns they may be, but their blue-footed love dance seems more ballet than circus. The large-eyed female honks, and the dot-eyed male whistles as the ballet continues. Displaying his blue webs, the male performs a sky point, indicating his ardor. Now the lady nods, as if to beckon her suitor. The boobies resemble their cousins, the pelicans, as they engage in the prenuptial dance. The male, smaller than the female, sky points or advertises once more. His message is accepted. This pair bond will continue throughout the long period required for the feeding and caring of their young.
On Isabella, the brown booby is more prevalent than the blue-footed booby. The browns number in the tens of thousands. The brown boobies always nest on open ground and are easily observed. A newly hatched chick is shaded by a male and fed by regurgitation. Males and females share equally in the feeding of the young.
In the brown booby rookery, we are witness to a family drama. Typically, there are two youngsters, one strong and dominant, the other weak and submissive. The strong one tenaciously insists that it be fed. Chicks close to maturity need huge amounts of food, but the parents respond only to vigorous demands. The weaker chick, unable to successfully compete, cannot survive. Driven by hunger, the sickly baby summons its strength and makes a desperate effort to feed. its entreaties are not strong enough. They are to no avail. The mother seems only irritated by her feeble chick. And once more, it is the stronger one she feeds. The parent has only so much food to give. It must not be wasted on those unfit. The submissive chick will go unfed, rebuffed by both its parent and its sibling. It will die of starvation, a victim of nature's inflexible laws.
From above come the frigates to seize their share of the brown booby's food. The flapping wings of feeding chicks act as a signal to the hungry thieves. In a remarkable display of aerial acrobatics, the frigates descend to steal morsels from the mouths of babes. To replenish its food supply, an adult brown booby returns to the sea. But the persistent frigate birds are close behind. A booby is forced to a crash landing. Then, in teams, the frigates swarm over their victim, prodding and biting until it releases the fish. Though masters of the air and skilled at surface fishing, frigates rarely touch the water. Time and again, as brown boobies fish, their meal is intercepted. Unlike the frigate, the brown booby is able to dive underwater for food. But on return to the surface, it's the frigate that prevails. Cousteau's cameras have caught but a brief glimpse of underwater feeding as the birds depart. A plan must be devised to film at length the underwater life of the seabirds of Isabella.
Above all others, there are the man-o-war birds that science has named Fregata magnificens, the magnificent frigate. They are the tax collectors of the sky, nature's instruments in the process of natural selection here. They put all the other birds on their mettle and keep them from becoming complacent with affluence, lethargic and fat from Isabella's abundance. As they soar over their dominion with wings that span up to 7 feet and with a body weight of only 2 or 3 pounds, these marvels of the air are masters of maneuverability and speed. They can hover still against the wind like stringless kites in the sky. Yet the frigates have their problems too. Their feet are so small they can barely walk on land. And since their feathers do not shed water, they sink in the ocean. We will explore further the paradox of this magnificent flying machine, which cannot swim, but lives well from the sea.
An endangered species in the United States, at Isla Isabella, brown pelicans thrive and multiply. Having fed in the sea, a young brown pelican flies toward the island, swallowing its catch en route. Isabella's permanent population of pelicans is small, but now it is breeding time and pelicans arrive en masse. With nesting sites available here, and as yet little of man's pollutants to interfere, pelicans can successfully breed in comparative peace.
Like all feathered inhabitants of the island, brown pelicans too are forced to pay rent to their frigate landlords. This time the payment is in the form of twigs, used by both species in nest building. Although it is an invasion, the pelicans are in no danger. It is only the twigs the frigates seek. The pelicans stoically endure these robbers of their nests. Now there is a contest in the sky between frigates. They compete for the twigs they need to build their own nests. A male brings home his prize, which is quickly put to good use by his mate. Above, the tournament of twigs continues for hours. As the frigates steal from each other, it seems more a playful game than a battle. Frigate birds depend on their flying skill for survival. The game they play is like a training bout between champions.
Cooperative nest building takes place between males and females already mated. This combined effort is thought to strengthen the bond between a mated pair. Another male carries an offering to his mate. The nest must be guarded at all times, for once unoccupied, it is sure to be plundered or confiscated. An unmated male frigate, his crimson neck sack inflated in full courtship display, searches for a vacant nest. A well-placed nest is an added attraction to the available females that fly over to select a mate.
The male flutters in welcome to the first visitor to his new quarters. But her stay is brief. Now another lady comes to call. As she inspects him closely, his ardor seems aroused. But in frigates, there is a fine line between courtship and aggression. Perhaps he was too aggressive for her taste. The next caller is a disappointment. It is a juvenile male. Another prospective bride. His agitation mounts. She may be the reward for his long and persistent display. The wide-winged embrace of the ardent male is accepted. The female nestles beneath his wing as he waggles his head and caresses her with his beak. This demonstration of mutual affection will continue for hours, and finally they will mate. The long-winged frigates nest on treetops to allow unobstructed takeoffs and landings. For over 50 days, a bonded pair will incubate its single egg and guard it against nest marauders. Among baby frigates hatched in flimsy nests precariously perched on treetops, the mortality rate is high. For nearly a year, they are totally dependent upon their parents. On land, the life cycle of seabirds is visible and clear, but it is into the sea they must go to obtain sustenance for themselves and their brood. Yet how they hunt in the sea, we still don't know.
Now the expedition is expanded. Aboard the sloop Serenade, Philippe Cousteau returns from Mazatlan, 100 miles to the north, bringing with him scientists, divers, and equipment for an intensified exploration of Isla Isabella and its waters.
A seaplane and a sloop, two vessels with wings, appropriate for the study of Isabella's winged world. Moving quietly, with minimum disturbance to these tranquil waters, Serenade will make an efficient diving platform. In these seas, rich in sardines and anchovies, the birds of Isabella fish. We will dive here and observe for the first time at close range birds feeding beneath the sea.
The brown boobies of Isla Isabella are of particular interest to local fishermen. For generations, the longer white feathers beneath its wings have been highly prized as fishing lures. In season, fishermen from villages along the Mexican coast invade the brown booby rookeries. True to their name, boobies are unusually tolerant of intruders and are easily caught. The plucked feathers will eventually be replaced by new growth, and this temporary loss does not impede the bird's ability to fly. The feathers are carefully collected to be made into fishing lures, attracted to the dorado and tuna, abundant here. Captain Cousteau and Philippe leave in the Zodiac to see for themselves how the brown booby feathers are used. There is a small fishing party. A variety of tuna called barrilete by the Mexicans is pulled in. Booby feathers are more effective than commercial lures. Unfortunately, when gathering booby feathers, the next generation of fishermen sometimes lack their elders' respect for life. They are not content to merely take the feathers. First, they kill. Brown boobies are well adapted for survival against natural forces, but against man's invasion, they are helpless. Cousteau has invited UCLA ornithologist Thomas Howell to join the expedition. With Philippe and Bernard Delamotte, Dr. Howell departs Serenade and heads toward the cliff dwellings of the red-billed tropic birds. The tropic birds nest in the nearly inaccessible caves along the steep cliffs of Isabella. Since it is breeding season, the island is active with courtship and newborn chicks. Dr. Howell wishes to examine closely the hidden nests of the tropic birds. Graceful in flight, tropic birds can barely walk on land. Therefore, they can nest only close to the edges of the cliffs. A parent guards its chick within the nest chamber. Dr. Howell carefully removes the chick to examine its feeding reflex.
You're angry.
See, you touch that little spot on the side of the beak, and that makes him open his beak.
Oh yeah, that the mother did that?
Yes, that's what she does. And then you just touch it a little. Then once you get the beak in, then he goes ahead with the swallowing reflex. And he'll take my finger all the way down to his stomach if I could reach that far. You see, these chicks are always in a hole somewhere, and so they're much cooler than the ones that nest out in the open.
The chick is returned to its parent. Many species of ground-nesting birds skillfully use their beaks to roll displaced eggs back into their nests. Dr. Howell approaches a blue-footed booby to test its ability to retrieve eggs. First, the parrot must be coaxed off its nest. Captain Cousteau and Philippe observe as Dr. Howell prepares to remove the booby's eggs from the hollowed-out nest.
The bird appears to be moving toward the eggs, but then settles in the empty nest. Although it can see the eggs, the booby is obviously programmed to sit on the nest rather than on the eggs. When the eggs are returned, incubation is resumed as a matter of course. Birds like these are totally unable to cope with unnatural disturbance. Now, to simulate encroachment by other birds, Dr. Howell places a mirror near the nest of a pair of blue-footed boobies with newborn chicks. These birds do little to defend their eggs. Will they be more aggressive in protecting their chicks? It is clear that these birds do value their chicks. They protect them with such vigor that I fear for the mirror.
Dr. Howell is led to high ground, where frigate birds are nesting in the treetops. Because of their enormous wingspan, frigates are easily ensnared on the ground. Unless they are able to extricate themselves, they will perish. not all of them get away.
This bird probably tried to land and got his wing caught in the crotch of those branches. And once that happens, he can't pull it out. The wing is proportionately so long that there's no chance of his extracting it, and then he just hangs there and dies. So there's no way they can be saved. And this was an adult male. You see, he's black all over. So he was an experienced flyer, and it was not a young bird that just met with an accident. But when it's caught right here, the more he struggles, the deeper it goes into the fork, and then he can't get out. So you can also see how small the feet are. Very small feet in proportion to the overall size of the bird. So to land, they have to do it just right and find the right size branch and plenty of room to flap these very long wings. Otherwise, they get entangled like this, and it's fatal. So they have to stay on the tops of the trees and not come down on the forest floor, as other birds can do, because they can't take off that way.
Frigate nests are loosely made. Young chicks often fall through them, and once on the ground, they are lost. They die of starvation. To survive, a chick would have to be returned to its own nest to be fed by its own parents. But it is impossible to tell from which nest a bird has fallen. A fallen chick, still alive and squawking in distress, is discovered by Bernard.
The baby alone on the ground.
Oh, well.
What happened to him?
Yes. Well, he must have fallen from the nest. Yes. He feels like he's well fed. So it's possible that if somebody would feed him, he might be able to survive.
Yeah?
But the parents will never do it, because once the bird has fallen from the nest on the ground, then they can't come down to the ground and take care of it. Now, this one is a little bit battered on the beak, as though something might have attacked him, but he doesn't seem too weak, and possibly if he's taken care of and someone could give him enough to eat, he might survive.
Do you think we can try that?
I think it's worth trying. He's hungry.
Yeah, he's very hungry.
Looks like he may have approached other birds, maybe
Yes,
affected him by
it could
pecking
be
around
a
his
little
head.
bit bloody there.
Yeah.
Okay, John, we can fish for him?
I think we'll have to, Bernard.
Okay.
Hey, little fella. Oh, it's nice and fat.
But he's still pretty vigorous.
What if you'll call me Daddy?
Now Guy Jouas plays proxy parrot as he builds a nest for the fallen bird. The chick, named by the team Toto, is carefully placed in the man-made nest, where it will be fed until it is mature enough to be on its own. It will soon have a companion, another rescued chick which Philippe calls Tutu.
Toto, Tutu. Hein? Allez, Tutu. Allez, Tutu.
As Toto and Tutu are fed, Cousteau is impressed by their voracious appetites.
Oh là là! C'est pas vrai.
Parent frigates have only one chick at a time to feed. The Cousteaus have two.
Ils peuvent même pas goûter, ils n'ont pas le temps de goûter. C'est englouti, sans discussion.
Special arrangements will be made for the continued feeding of Toto and Tutu after the team's departure.
C'est bon, Toto?
Suddenly, there is a gathering of seabirds around a shrimp boat anchored in the bay. So-called trash fish, the non-commercial catch from fishermen's nets, now become a seabird feast. Birds flock to the trash fish in even greater numbers than when they feed in the open sea.
We will use the trash fish as bait to attract the birds. Controlled feeding like this might give us an opportunity to film at length the spectacle of seabirds feeding not only above, but beneath the sea.
On board a Mexican shrimp boat, John Ayton and Bill McDonald of the Cousteau team gather discarded fish to bring back to the sloop Serenade.
Okay, thank you.
The fish will be used to draw the seabirds to one area where the temptation of food will outweigh their natural fear of man. To locate a school of fish in the open sea, seabirds may have to travel hundreds of miles. For the birds of Isabella, hunting will be easier today. On board Serenade, preparations have begun for the long-awaited dive.
Allergique, allergique.
Bon, ben, à tout à l'heure.
Salut.
The divers hope their bubbles will not frighten the birds away.
Bon. Travailler un peu. Ah, la vache.
Philippe will handle the underwater camera. With Cousteau's descent, the first fish are thrown. And the ever-alert frigate birds are first on the scene. Next come the brown boobies, not yet harassed by the frigates, which for now are satisfied to snatch the fish still floating on the surface. Soon dozens of boobies, pelicans, frigates, and gulls are all partaking of the feast. The competition is fierce as each bird scrambles for its share. With its hooked beak, specially adapted for surface feeding, a frigate snatches a floating fish. A brown booby comes up with its catch. One frigate snatches part of it, then another takes the rest. It is a whirling storm of hungry birds, and Cousteau ventures into the midst of it. Around Cousteau, the birds converge in a feeding orgy. Both above and below the water, he is surrounded by frantic birds. It may be safer underwater. For the first time, brown boobies are filmed diving for food beneath the sea. For now, they are beyond the reach of frigates.
It was thought that boobies dive bomb directly to a target, carried by their momentum into the sea. Now we discover that they also use their wings to literally fly underwater in pursuit of their prey. Once they dive, cutting the water like javelins, the boobies are transformed into birds of silver. Their feathers have trapped myriads of tiny air bubbles that enwrap them in shining cloaks. Some of them reach a depth of 20 feet and remain underwater for nearly half a minute. The boobies dive close to me, feeding in sudden spurts. A booby mistakes my finger for a fish.
Like every species of seabird, the pelican has its own method of fishing. When hunting for food in the open sea, pelicans dive from great heights. But here, alongside Serenade, they are more cautious. They look more like ducks as they gather food just beneath the surface. The pelican dips its beak with its pouch spread wide and scoops up its catch. The Heermann gull will try to steal the catch before it is transferred from pouch to throat.
These seabird Cyanos use their pouches as fishermen use their nets. The birds fish for their offspring as well as for themselves. They gorge to capacity before returning to their nests to feed their young. We have been hosts of a most successful dinner party. Despite a minor casualty, it has been an exhilarating dive.
Avec Bobby? Ouais, c'est ça, là, tu vois. À Boulate, ah oui, j'avais compris la frégate. À Boulate, tu as vu? Hein, Edouard? T'es surpris, hein? Oui.
The most lasting impression of Isla Isabella is of the soaring frigates. The frigates are not villains. They stimulate the struggle for life here. Here, among the seabirds of Isabella, their unyielding pressure separates the strong from the weak and helps assure a healthy, thriving community of birds.
After 9 months on Isla Isabella, the seabird study is completed. The divers have left on the Serenade, and now in the PBY, Captain Cousteau and Philippe depart. Concerned about the worldwide decline of seabird habitats, the Cousteaus are determined to call attention to Isla Isabella and will urge that it be protected against abuse.
There are few breeding grounds that remain for seabirds, and their number continues to shrink. There is little time left to save Isabella and its birds from destruction. We have recommended to the Mexican authorities that this small rock in the Pacific be designated a national park. And at the close of our study, it did become an official seabird sanctuary under strict and continuous supervision. The lives of seabirds are demanding, but they have mastered the oceans, and under precarious conditions, they manage to coexist. We may marvel at seabirds and be inspired by them, but if we interfere with them, we are sure to harm them.